Hello and welcome to Jeremy's Retro Bar. I'm Jeremy and this is my retro bar. For now. This week I am doing a build and I've not done a build yet, and it makes me very nervous to do a build on something that has a deadline, something that has to get done, because normally I'm a huge procrastinator. And so this episode I'm going to take this shell that I purchased that has nothing in it. It's an old IBM 5154 EGA display housing that had nothing in it, and I purchased that off of eBay, and I'm gonna put this LCD panel that I purchased off of AliExpress into it so that I will still have a period correct casing on a new VGA screen for my IBM AT. So I'm pretty excited about this. Case is in a little bit of rough condition. Gonna have to clean that up a bit. I'm gonna try to do some soldering to try to see if I can get these knobs to work with the panel. And of course getting it to mount and also to get it to look somewhat period correct inside is gonna be interesting. And so I'm very nervous, but I'm excited to get started. But of course first, we're gonna need to make ourselves a drink. So for this week's drink, I'm gonna be making a blue martini, partially because IBM, Big Blue, and partially because I just wanted to make kind of a regular cocktail. I'm gonna start off with 3 ounces of vodka, 1/2 ounce blue curacao, a dash of Angostura bitters, ice, do some olives as a garnish. Just gonna shake this up. Look at that. A beautiful blue martini. Cheers. Let's get building. So here we are in Easel, which is the software that my CNC machine uses. And this is the first time I've really ever used the CNC machine, so we're gonna see how this works. Now, all the dark black lines are lines that are supposed to cut all the way through. And you can see that I have this rectangle here that is in gray, and that's going to cut out a little bit less, and that's going to be the inset for the LCD panel. On the right you can see a 3D representation of how it's supposed to cut it out, and I'm cutting this out of 1/2 inch MDF because that's what I had around, and I think it'll work. So first lesson learned is that giant rectangle that I had in the middle to display the screen, I should have done it as an outline and done that as a cutout, because what it's doing here is doing a carve out of the entire area. So while the CNC machine is cutting out our frame, I'm going to go ahead and take the shell of this monitor and remove all electronic parts and go ahead and give it a nice clean. So the 5 hours is nearly up, and it looks like it just did that middle section. Luckily, the CNC machine was able to do the crucial part, which is that inset that's going to hold the LCD. So for the outside, I'm just going to do this by hand, and just going to draw on the measurements here and cut it out myself. of truth here. Let's pop this in here. Oh yeah, fits. Oh, that's great. That looks so good. Let's see if this guy fits. As well. Oh, might have to grind that off a little bit, but that's so cool. I'm so excited. This is great. So in order to make this look more period correct, I'm going to go ahead and add a second layer that's plexiglass. And this is going to sit in front of this frame and the LCD. And so I'm going to go ahead and trace it here and trim it out just like I did with the wood frame. Now the moment of truth. Let's see if this plexiglass screen will fit inside the frame. I'd call that a win. Let's go ahead and get this frame painted. In order to achieve the curvature of the plexiglass screen, I'm going to go ahead and use this heat gun to heat up the corners so that they're at a slightly different angle than the rest of the screen, so that it will mount straight and then also achieve that curvature that I'm looking for. This is looking pretty great. Now I just need to take care of the space between the plexiglass and the black frame. I'm going to trace a template that's going to go one on each side and one on the top and one on the bottom that will accurately fill the space between the plexiglass and the black frame. Now that I got these measurements transferred to wood, it's time to go ahead and do some cutting. All right, now let's see how this fits. So it does a good job of filling the gap, but it looks like it's a little too thick and won't let the frame sit flush. So we're going to go ahead and trim that down. All right, now let's try this again. And yeah, this looks like it's going to work. Go ahead and get this sanded down and make the other ones. So I forgot to film me painting this one piece, but right here I'm basically just going to glue the corners using wood glue, just like you would with a picture frame. And now that that glue is dried, I'll go ahead and do the other corners. I'm now realizing I don't really have a great way to clamp this for the second two corners. I'm going to go ahead and glue this straight to the frame. In order for the glue to set properly, I'm going to go ahead and put something heavy on top of this. So let's see, what do I have laying around here? Perfect. And we'll go ahead and let that sit and check back on it later. All right, let's see how it did. Okay, let's see how this looks. Okay, lines up, that lines up. Yes, I think that'll work. That's so cool. All right, now I just need to paint this. And while that dries, we're going to go ahead and turn our attention to this back panel. I just needed to have the VGA, HDMI, and power connectors. But I'm going to try to do this in a way that's non-destructive to the monitor. So here we are back in easel, and what I'm trying to achieve here is kind of a sandwich effect. So the bottom panel that I'm going to make is going to hold the ports themselves, and the top panel will hold the rear panel to it. And these will sit one on each side of the opening in the back of the monitor. That way later, if I want to take this out, I haven't damaged the monitor in any way. And I think this looks pretty good. Let's try it again. Much better than last time. This carve only took about 10 minutes versus the 5 hours of the last one, so I'm learning. Now I just need to cut these little tabs to get the pieces out. Now let's see if these work. That one fits, and perfect. And here's a closer look at how they'll sandwich together. Looks like this one also works, so let's go ahead and get these pieces painted. Looks like we finally have all the parts that we need, so now it's time to put it together. Before I put the mounting screws in, I'm re-drilling the hole in the plexiglass just to make sure that it lines up correctly. And here I'm just using some padded double-sided tape to keep the PCBs in place. I'm wiring in the original IBM 5154's power switch on the power line coming into the monitor,
before it gets to the actual LCD, because the switch on the LCD puts it into a low power mode instead of turning it completely off, and I like the tactile click of the IBM 5154's switch. So this LCD panel has a little PCB that has 4 buttons on it, and those are menu and select and different options for the LCD. Because I'm trying to keep everything stock, but I also want access to those functions, what I decided to do was, it has an IR receiver on it and it came with a little remote. So using the existing holes in the bottom of the monitor housing, I'm running an IR receiver through those holes and I'm going to wire it into the PCB. This will give me access to all the functions while only having a small little receiver visible on the outside but underneath the monitor, and I'll be able to use the remote to do all of the functions on those buttons without having to drill any holes or create any new buttons. So the back panel pieces are finished drying, and it looks like the color is pretty close to the beige of the monitor, so that's awesome. We'll start by putting this power connector in. So now let's mount that VGA connector. And now the HDMI connector. Now I just need to drill the holes for the screws that are going to hold the 2 sides of the panel together. That looks awesome. Now I just need to get that power connector mounted. I needed to extend the wires a little bit, so here I am connecting it up to the power switch. And it looks like that worked. Here's a close-up, and from the inside. I think we're finally ready to put this case back together.
All right, so here it is, complete and working. It turned out actually a lot better than I thought from a aesthetic standpoint. The only thing that I kind of have issue with is just the performance of the LCD isn't as good as newer LED backlit screens that I'm used to now on, on your MacBook Pros and whatever. So that's the only thing, is I do wish it was a little brighter, and it probably doesn't show up super great here on camera, but I can cut to some close-ups. But for the era, and when you're sitting at the machine, it's actually not bad. It's just off angle and isn't as good. So I really like that the on-off switch works correctly. Unfortunately, the brightness and contrast don't map to anything because it's digital, which is why I have the little remote and the IR receiver, which is hidden below that you can't even see. And that is very nice that I can get to the menus if I need to adjust anything, and don't have to mess up anything on the face. Everything that I did with this conversion is reversible, which is great. So if I somehow randomly came across an EGA 5154 monitor that was in terrible physical condition but worked inside, the insides worked, I could pop it into this case and have something really cool. This project has been sitting on my desk for probably about a year, and I'm excited that I finally got it done. I'm glad that I finally used my CNC machine and twice, and was able to figure out how that works a little bit better in the process of doing this video. I like that I now have a fully color screen for my IBM AT. Before I had a PS2 monitor where one of the colors was starting to go out, which I'll probably recap and use that later, but I kind of like the 5154 with the IBM AT as far as aesthetics, in my personal opinion, but obviously everybody has their own take on it, and this is one of those systems that skirts those two eras of the older IBMs and the newer IBM PS2s, so it can kind of go either way. But now I've got a historically accurate looking monitor that works perfectly well. Obviously glare, you can't see it great because of the lights, but it does work great. And I'm very excited that now my IBM AT system is complete. So I hope you guys enjoyed this build video, and these are the things that I like doing probably the most, but are also the most difficult for me to make myself film because I mess up so often. And so I want to do a lot more videos like this in the future, so if you guys liked it, let me know. I have lots of ideas for lots of other projects that I would like to do eventually, and hopefully I get to them here on the channel. So thank you for watching, thank you very much for subscribing, and we'll see you next time.